Welcome back to BlockTV. This is Untold Stories TV. He's one of the cryptosphere's first stars, some would argue its original bad boy, Charlie Shrem, Bitcoin's face in the early days and now one of the industry's main storytellers. His chosen medium is podcasting. Shrem hosts the massively popular Untold Stories, where twice a week he conducts a lengthy and in-depth conversation with the biggest, most experienced, and most influential figures in the business. BlockTV, BlockWorks Group, and of course Charlie Shrem himself are bringing you a taste of Untold Stories on TV. Now, this week we are featuring Charlie's interviews with David Bailey, Tuur Demeester, and Arthur Brightman. So without further ado, we are joined from Miami, Florida, by none other than Charlie Shrem himself. Charlie, how are you?
It's always good to be here.
It's lovely to have you. And you know what, before we dive into this, because you're in Miami, I'm in Tel Aviv, what connects us is the coronavirus narrative, which you cannot escape in the news here. How are things on your end? Are folks freaking out?
You know, people in Florida are always, we have hurricane season here, you know, every year for 3 months. So we're kind of used to being able to read through the lines of the media, and life is going on normally here. People here care about hygiene. So for example, now in the gym, people are more worried about cleaning out, you know, the gym equipment. So that's always good. But everything else, in terms of like preparedness, we all have food, extra food. We all know how to, you know, pack for water and things like that. So our grocery stores haven't run out of water, haven't run out of Purell and things like that. It's just life has gone on here. We're used to dealing with the world is ending every year. We get it.
The world is ending scenario, definitely.
Every summer we go through that same scenario.
No, and maybe that's what is needed, because, you know, looking at the differences in the United States between the East Coast, that seems to be fairly calm, and then the West Coast and places where all these reports where, you know, everything is off the shelves. Very, very different. Now, before we dive into it, are you surprised? Because, you know, being in the sphere, many, many, many times we hear this narrative of Bitcoin will rise when the world ends. And there was never more of a, you know, substantial narrative of the world's about to end, quote unquote, so to speak, than this coronavirus narrative. And yet Bitcoin's not acting as a safe haven, one could argue. What do you think of that?
I think it is, especially, you know, the other day something interesting happened to me. Someone asked me about a project, about a different coin. He's like, hey, have you checked out this coin? Can you check it out? And I said, I looked at it, and I searched Google, I searched, you know, Twitter search, I searched everything. And I could barely find any announcements or any conversation about, you know, this specific project or coin anywhere, like zero. The only thing I could find was when two exchanges announced that the coin was listed. Then I went into WeChat, and then I went into Weibo, and I went into a bunch of different Chinese and Asian-speaking blogs and different social networking platforms, and I typed in the name of it, and I even had translated it into Mandarin, and I typed everything into Japanese too, and Korean, and I found tons, thousands of messages in real time. Everyone was talking about this coin project. It's traded on exchange. It's as big as EOS, you know, in China. Why am I telling you this story? Well, the reason I'm telling you the story is that just because we don't see the conversations happening doesn't mean that they're not happening. This was an experience for me that happened just the other day. And so I think, and what I'm seeing by talking to a lot of friends of mine, is that Bitcoin and stable coins are very much being seen, especially Ethereum as well, being seen as safe haven narratives and safe haven conversations. You know, like people are having the conversations around the table, then they're buying up a little bit. It's not being seen as that ultimate safe haven yet, like someone saying, okay, we need to put all our money into Bitcoin today. It's more of like, I'm going to buy a few Bitcoin. I'm going to see what's going on. This is really cool. It's still the early dabbling phases, but at the same time, we're definitely seeing Bitcoin being used as a safe haven, especially now with the coronavirus. You know, who's to say what the price will be right now if there was no coronavirus going on?
That's true. No, that's true. It's a valid point, and I think well best explained also with the narratives that are being pushed away wherever we are, that need to always be taken a step further, as you do. You're doing your own research. But let's jump in because the first guest we're featuring today that was on your podcast is David Bailey, CEO of Bitcoin Inc., the company that owns the seminal Bitcoin magazine. It's also a publication that you used to write for, right?
Yeah. I definitely wrote for Bitcoin Magazine. So many people did, from Vitalik to I mean, everyone who was involved in Bitcoin early on was probably writing for Bitcoin Magazine at one point. And it's nice that David and his company took over the mantle and took it over, because they're doing such amazing things to keep the culture and nostalgia going of Bitcoin and crypto.
And speaking of nostalgia, you and David go way back. In this episode, you actually spoke a lot about the 2013 Bitcoin conference in San Jose, and many of the participants in that conference are the biggest business and thought leaders in the industry today. But the way you and David tell it, and what drove people then, was the idea more than the prospect of striking it rich, which is a very different scenario than today. Let's have a listen.
I remember coming back at like 2 a.m. also. I had went out with Cameron and Tyler. We went to like a nightclub or something. And Cameron and Tyler and I come back to the conference, and at like 2 a.m. and Adam Draper is running the hackathon at 2 o'clock in the morning, and every developer is still there. And I remember like snickering to Courtney, saying like, what a bunch of losers. Who's like staying awake at 2 a.m. just to code Bitcoin? Like, why are they not out at the club right now? You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't looking down on it, but I didn't really like understand why people would like stay up all night and code on Bitcoin. It didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I met people that told me that they had lied to their job about, being sick,
Really?
or in order to go, because it wasn't. I mean, Bitcoin at this point in time was still not a kosher thing to say that you were involved in. And so it's like, okay, you have software engineers here that work at Apple and Google and all of these great technology companies sneaking out of work to come here because they love this technology and they want to work on this in their free time.
First of all, Charlie, I love the reminiscing, because it really, 2013, the inception, it must have been such an exciting place to be. And, would you say that passion, because sometimes what we look at in the sphere is that passion can kind of turn into nastiness. Would you say that's the case?
It does. And I hate when that happens. I hate when passion comes from hostility. And I've tried to spend a lot of time understanding why, by asking the ones who become hostile. And then I also ask the ones, on the show who have been the victims of that hostility, and trying to understand why. And there's a lot of reasons I get. One of them is that you have groups of people that feel like disenfranchised. Also, people feel like they've been scammed. So those are the ones that get hostile. You see that a lot of in like the Bitcoin maximalists. Then you see that you have the hostility like in the Ripple army, and sometimes communities that used to have a lot more insecurity where they fit into the space. So I feel like maybe Ripple has that hostility. A lot of the Ripple people that like Ripple and everything, XRP, I'm just using them as an example because they're known as a little bit more of a hostile community. I feel like with them, it could come down to the insecurity of where XRP fits into the larger crypto, ecosystem. A lot of the, a lot of people in the in the crypto spectrum don't look at XRP as an actual cryptocurrency. So maybe the hostility comes from that insecurity. I don't really know. But I do think that the hostility has like gone away a lot. And if you notice, like crypto Twitter has become more boring because of that.
Yeah, I mean, I welcome that type of boreness. I think, hostility doesn't get us anywhere. But yes, one can argue that. So, it's been.
It's not going away, but I mean, I'm hopeful that it's gone down. I feel like it has at least, but
it's a bit. I think it's a bit overtaken as of late by a lot of preparedness and craziness of coronavirus. But I hope it has gone down. Quick question about the Winkelvosses, because there you are hanging out with them. I'm assuming you guys don't hang out anymore.
Well, I mean, I'm in Florida now. They're in New York. They ended up doing their own thing. After I had gotten arrested, we all kind of split ways. But I'm very impressed with Gemini, and that it's been able to be that. I guess for any ecosystem to exist and to do well and to be successful, you need to have different options for different people. There is a segment of people that want a very, very highly regulated exchange, and that's what Gemini is. And they're doing a good service for those people. Then you have other ones that want a non-custodial exchange. So they're different, decentralized exchanges. There are different companies and different products and services for different people and for different companies in the space. And that's a good thing. So hats off to them.
flexibility. Now, the interview, the specific interview, was heavy on nostalgia, but it wasn't all good times. Can't help but hear some frustration apropos to, nastiness in both of your voices when you talk about what has become of the community that, both of you helped form. And as you said, Twitter may be slightly less toxic, but not entirely the entire sphere. Let's hear that exchange.
What makes Bitcoin valuable is its users. And I mean, there are 50 million Bitcoin users. Like, if the community was mobilized in a direction, like we could be making Bitcoin front and center in this presidential election in the United States and like making it a relevant thing that has to be talked about because there's such a large contingency of people that care about it. Like we could be forcing Bitcoin into sports, into art, into financial and monetary crises that are unfolding around the world. We could have Bitcoin be the plan B, the counterpunch to the things that are out there. But there's just no one representing that Bitcoin narrative today, or getting the organizing it. I guess.
They're doing it with hostility. The ones that are running, having the Bitcoin, badge are like this pro BTC stupid movement. There's like this whole like tribalism. I saw someone put up a slideshow thing the other day. Said like, these are the rules about Bitcoin. Anything that's not Bitcoin is a scam. Anyone that tries to take your Bitcoin from you is a scam. And so even like spending Bitcoin is a scam. We should be holding. That is dumb.
Now, we spoke, Charlie, about the toxicity, and there's a great point in that conversation that you two make, because you see that toxicity not just in the sphere, you see it almost in every political, venue nowadays, all around the world. Do you think the sphere can move forward? Because you explained it beautifully before of why it exists, but can it move forward without, if it doesn't lose that toxicity? Because a community can't be a community if everybody hates on each other.
We can't move forward we can't move forward with toxicity. And that's why I think, and it looks like it's changing and it's going down, in the evolution of the cycles. But what David said about pushing better narratives, I mean, he's right. Why are we not? I mean, it used to be so much more. It used to be, remember in 2015, BitPay sponsored the Bitcoin Orange Bowl, one of the biggest football games on TV. You had just companies saying we'll put money together to push the Bitcoin narrative to the rest of the world. And you don't see that happening much anymore. A lot of companies just care about their company. They're pushing their company. In fact, like the whole reason I started the Bitcoin Foundation was to simply do this, is to pool resources together to push the Bitcoin narrative, and that changed. But I haven't lost hope, and I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing with this show at least, and I'll do my part and hope that other people do theirs too.
That's the little we can do in every venue of life, by the way. Very well said on that front. Now, the next guest that we're featuring is Tuur Demeester. Tuur is a founding partner of Adamant Capital, an early Bitcoin adopter from way back in 2012. And he also has a background in Austrian economy and specializes in the study of boom and bust cycles in the economy. And you talked quite a bit with him about the fundamentals of Bitcoin and its economic sense. You also got into the reasons people might be attracted to Bitcoin. Let's have a listen.
Well, the third to last reason is the speculative lure of the asset. And that was very much so in 2015, 2016. People are still very much burnt with the whole ICO market and shitcoins and coins, and you're seeing arrests every day still. Does the speculative lure still exist as much as it did? Even going back to 2012, is it, can you look at the speculative chart of Bitcoin, and if you can quantify the speculative lure, the speculative excitement, do you think that chart is a chart that's going to be continuing to go up over time, or does it kind of balance itself out?
Depends on your perspective. We're up 100% versus 12 months ago, and we're up 1,000% versus the start of 2017. Like that's.
I'm not debating that. I'm talking about more of like the lure of basically people's belief that that they're going to speculate on this asset, and there's enough of a belief that down the road it'll be higher. But maybe that's, I guess the jury's out on that one. Who knows?
Well, I think that'll be just, that'll come from, the ultimately the price is going to be, the bottom of the price range is defined by the value investors. They buy when it's cheap. They don't care about all the speculative rallies. They buy when it's cheap, and they build a bottom and so they build the fundamental trend, and then the speculation is like a layer on top, where some of these people who speculate, they actually end up holding some for the long term. So it's kind of like a gateway drug. The speculation is a gateway drug to hodling. So I think that'll remain the case.
Charlie, how important do you think the speculative lore is?
It's really important because when people look at Bitcoin, one of the first things they look at is the price of Bitcoin, and then they, decide to jump in or whatever. So the speculation of an asset is one of the reasons that a lot of people got in very early, and it's one of the reasons people are getting in now, and it's what keeps people in long term. Yes, Bitcoin is a long-term store of value. I believe it, and most people believe it as they're in the space. It's a great way to spend money if you need to send someone value instantly over the internet. There's no better way. But the belief that the value will go up. I mean, there's a lot of people say, so how is Bitcoin not a Ponzi scheme? Because that's what makes a Ponzi scheme. Everyone has a belief that the value will be greater. But the difference here is that there's no centralized issuing authority that's benefiting and has the money behind the scenes. Yes, Bitcoin has to continue appreciating over time or it'll die completely. That's the way it's built. And that's, one of these things that we all know. And that fact is what continues to give Bitcoin its value, because speculators, one of the first things you say to yourself, or I say to myself, is, what's the lowest amount of money that I would pay for one Bitcoin? And when that dollar value or whatever, or euro value, or shekel value is in everyone's head, that's the base level of any asset of Bitcoin.
Now, you also addressed arguably Bitcoin's biggest moment of 2020, the upcoming halving, which we're all obsessed with. Let's have a listen.
Are halvings priced in at this point, or can we still rely on halvings being this catalyst towards the next bull market?
Well, we've only had 2 real halvings while Bitcoin had a price, so I think there's actually not enough information to know how this works. It's a very peculiar asset. It's all very new, and there just aren't assets like this in the world where mathematically the supply is then cut in half. That is just kind of a new experiment, and I think that having 2 data points is just not enough to say that we have a trend. So I can't. My hunch is that it has some effect. But that it's, when people feel bullish, the effect is overestimated. And when people feel bearish, the effect is underestimated. And I think that we're probably at a point where people are a little bit underestimating that the halving is coming. It's real.
Charlie, that sparks me to ask you the $1 million question I had a chance to ask CZ the other day. Do you believe the halving has been priced in?
What did he say? I kind of want to know.
No, that's why I threw that in, because I know now you're thinking, oh my God, come on. I actually...
So I think that we are very much underestimating the value of the halving, and I think one of the reasons that is because people in the industry now are so new still that they don't remember the halving 4 years ago. And it's crazy to think about that for a second, that the last halving was 4 years ago. And so many people in the industry, I mean, I just don't see the conversations anywhere. The halving was talked about so much 4 years ago leading up to it. It was just, that's all everyone talked about. And I don't see that now. So it's making me very secretly bullish.
Okay, I'll tell you what he said. He says he doesn't think it's been priced in yet.
Yeah, I agree.
And, and then he basically said the same thing. Yeah.
at a basic level, I think the Bitcoin price will be double it is now by the halving at a basic. I could be wrong, but that's just kind of my feeling.
I'm going to send you what he said. He said basically the exact same thing, just shorter, which is better. The conversation with Tuur also got very personal.
If that's the conservative approach, so the conservative is that it'll be double. I mean, what do you think? It's kind of crazy.
No, it is very crazy. No, it's crazy, and it's around the corner. And I think you're totally right about the fact that it feels like people are not talking about it enough. But hey,
a lot of people think that coronavirus. A lot of people think that coronavirus like is the catalyst for the Bitcoin price like the past few weeks. I think it's the opposite. I think the coronavirus narrative definitely is overshadowing Bitcoin right now, and it's hindering Bitcoin's bull market at this point.
And not just that, I tend to agree, it's hindering so much more. But speaking, of the conversation with Tuur, you got very personal. Both of you bravely opening up about struggles in your life. I think also that's the power of podcasting. Let's listen to one of those excerpts for that conversation.
But this is the thing, Tuur. As much as the unfortunate things that happen in our lives, my life and my wife's life, going to prison showed us, both of us, that in this case, in my case, water was in fact thicker than the blood. So I was able to experience a real life situation where my family had choices to make, hard choices, whether it was going to be, like stand by me or not, and they chose to not. So I have that in the back of my head. Most people don't. Do you have memories, I guess, like that? I don't want you to say specific ones, but I guess that help you usher you through, because look, dude, like I still struggle. My wife does too. I still struggle with leaving my family. I mean, just last week, I just had a cry in my car by myself. It happens.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, like I guess I haven't written a lot about this. I have like one article on Medium, and then recently on Twitter I said a few things about it. But to me, it's like an amputation. It's just like you've gone through and like you've lost a leg, and it's like, yeah, of course you can have some help and some doctors can do some things, but like it's hard, and you're going to continue to struggle with it.
Firstly, Charlie, I don't think people realize, and I did not know that, just how isolated you were during your prison stint, and we keep forgetting how incredibly young you are. And I had no idea your parents didn't support you throughout that time. And did your relationship not bounce back from that?
No, it has not. It's been a little over 3 years since I was released, but I'm happy because when you're born, family is amazing, and blood, people say that blood is thicker than water or water is thicker than blood. I don't think it's like a black or white thing. It's a gray area, not a gray area, but everyone's different. In the absence of a family structure that was given to me, I was able to build in the past few years, past like 7-8 years, I was able to build my own family structure of people that actually love me for me and love us for us, and a better support network. So I don't look at it as a negative. In fact, and I think Tuur agrees that I feel like I have a better family than people do that they're born with.
Hey, look, I mean, I'm the daughter of an orphan. He would say the same thing, but I'm assuming also that deep down inside you are hoping at a certain point for some sort of reconciliation. Of course. Yeah, because it's the people you grew up with. Courtney and you have been together for a very long while, right? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Almost 8 years, yeah, 7 and something years.
Oh, that's
my whole adult life, basically.
That's family, and you become very, and I learned that from listening to you and Tuur, because you let yourself become personal, and you let your guests talk about life beyond crypto. How important is that for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's so important. Tuur has a crazy story, and I find myself calling my guests before and saying, hey, I know this about you that other people don't. Are you okay with me talking about it? And in the case of Tuur, 99.9%, he's one of the most well-known people in crypto and Bitcoin. If you look at the Hive 1 list, he's top 10. But no one really knows that he struggled for years longer than me with leaving a very abusive and toxic family structure that he had to leave. But not only that, he had to leave his country and resettle in a brand new country literally knowing no one except for like very few people. I was one of those people that he knew, and I was able to help him, and he helped me. But I mean, his story is crazy, but against all odds, he was able to like rebuild that, and his life now is something that I'm jealous of.
And what level? On a personal level?
Yeah, I mean, just talking to him on and offline. I'm jealous of his friends. I'm jealous of his family structure. I'm not jealous in a bad way, but it's
I
like
get it.
envy.
Envious.
I love and have my own amazing life, but I look at his and I'm like, not jealous like I want it, but more happy for him. And envy in a good way, because I know what he didn't have. I literally remember when Tuur moved to the U.S. and he called me and we video chatted, and he was literally in an empty apartment with no furniture and a mattress on the floor. And then now here he is today. I'm living an amazing life. So that's really nice to see.
As apropos, something to aspire to, the promise of hope. Now, the next guest we're featuring is Arthur Brightman. He's the co-founder of Tezos, a brilliant technologist, really.
This was a crazy episode. Well, so it was a crazy episode, I'll tell you why. Because no one knows this, but Arthur and I recorded an episode a few months prior. And the first 20 minutes of the episode was very, it was a lot of tension. And a lot of tension because I think he thought he's so on edge, and so people are constantly coming after him about Tezos and trying to trap him with words. And so the first 10 or 20 minutes of the episode, I was asking him basic things like, why did you found Tezos? And he's like, oh, I didn't do it, the foundation. And it was like I didn't intend for, I was like, dude, I'm not trying to trap you. But at the same time, on my end, maybe I should have done a better job researching his triggers. So we were able to redo. So he called me up and he's like, so I told him, I said, listen, I'm not going to release this episode because I don't want to release a 30-minute episode, and I don't want to release the first 30 minutes of us yelling at each other, basically. It's not good for you, it's not good for me, so let's just move forward. He's like, no, I feel really bad. Can we please re-record? And I've never re-recorded an episode. It was the only one I've ever done.
Now, first of all, it's fascinating because, you got me at two things. You mentioned that you call interviewees up beforehand. You did that with Tuur. And, you asked them if they're comfortable with X, Y, Z. And the fact that you re-recorded and you thought that yelling is not good for either of you, God bless you, Charlie, because that's all people do today in media is yell at each other.
Well, we internally, we thought about it. We had a meeting. We said, this would be a great episode because, okay, if I had released that original episode, the downloads would have been double. Not to say that the downloads weren't good. It was amazing. It was an amazing episode.
I'm sure, but for the wrong reason.
It would have been, it would have been a stupid episode. No one would have learned anything. It would have been entertaining. You need a good balance of educate and entertain. And that would have been way too much entertainment and not enough educate.
Entirely so. We call it infotainment. Let's have a listen to a little bit of that conversation right now.
I think it would be more plausible if people were saying you know what, some of these ideas are good and we wish we had them, but it's not worth changing Bitcoin for them. I could respect that position. Or the idea of saying some ideas are good and then we're gonna but we need to very, very carefully integrate them over time. That's respectable. But the idea is no, these ideas are not good and we wouldn't integrate them anyway. It's kind of wow, what a nice coincidence that all the ideas are perfect from the get-go. So I'm pretty skeptical of that point of view. But I also come from I also come from a position of maximalism in the sense that I think this is largely a winner-take-all scenario for blockchains.
Do you really?
Yeah. I think the main use case by far is being some form of money, and that monetary premium is a huge network effect.
So you were surprised there about his maximalist confession. Why?
Well, I rarely, so you have Bitcoin maximalists, and then you have altcoin, folks. Not in a negative. It's altcoin. It's alternative to Bitcoin. But rarely do I find altcoin folk maximalist about their altcoin. Usually it's multi-token world, it's a lot of different coins and tokens will do different things, yada, 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 whatever. But rarely do I. So I was listening and I'm like, what? I was a little bit taken back, but at the same time, it's so cool to talk to people on a day-to-day basis who have such wildly different opinions. But these are not random people you meet in the street. These are like extremely brilliant people who are the ones theorizing and, you know, coming up with new economic theory, or, you know, these are ones that are solving mathematical formulas that we've not been able to solve. These are people that are coming up with new cures and treatments for medical, you know, diseases and things like that. They're not your average person. And here I am, me being able to be in my studio here in little old Florida, talking to these people who have the most brilliant opinions and are just like, yeah, of course I'm right. Like, it's unbelievable. So yeah.
We tend to forget that we actually living in exciting times sometimes. That's it. Another big picture item that you discussed with Arthur, and one that is particularly timely now, of course, is Bitcoin being used as a store of value and the drawbacks of that. We touched on that, but let's listen to this bit.
And right now, the main problem is that the main use case so far has been basically store of value. That's been demonstrated by Bitcoin. You know, people just buy Bitcoin and hold it. And I think I think it's a completely fair use case. I think that holding is using. I'm completely in line with that assessment. However, it doesn't provide for a lot of provide for a lot of useful feedback, and that's an issue. And it's only once once you start having more people using it, it's a bit of a catch-22, because you don't have enough people using it, and so as a result you don't get a lot of feedback, and as a result maybe you're missing out on people using it. So there's a bit of a conundrum here.
I see your point.
But it's the main, you know, it's in its entire space, that is the main problem. The main problem is that there's more infrastructure, there's more tooling, there's more technologies, and there is demand for technology. That's the main.
So, Charlie, you know, that's the brings us to the classic question, which I've been asking for the past year and a half. How do we get to widespread adoption? And do you think it's still in the cards?
Yeah, I think he agrees with Arthur agrees with David Bailey in that holders are users, because, you know, the narrative for some coins is that holders are not users. And I would say that, you know, the person that has the BitPay app on their phone or whatever, and that's looking at the price and that's using their Bitcoin, that's one of the most important users of our industry, and that's the person who's going to push for widespread mass adoption. And we are seeing it. It's happening every day. We're growing. It's not going in the opposite direction. So it's something that is happening, and we'll just wake up one day and we'll see more people than not will have Bitcoin wallets on their phones or computers.
At the risk of sounding a little old, it's what I tell my children. All we need is a little patience, maybe. You know, a little patience. Charlie, as always, fantastic content, a fantastic conversation. Thank you for joining us. And for those of you watching, there is so much more excellent discussions on this podcast of Untold Stories and others, which you can find by searching blockworksgroup.io. Join us again next time on Untold Stories TV with a series of new interviews that Charlie is conducting. And for more blockchain and cryptocurrency news, of course, check us out on blocktv.com.